Hey, Printers, welcome back to Printavo's Printers podcast. I'm your host, Bruce from Printavo. Thank you so much for listening. We have got Mr. Stephen Farragut at Campus Inc. and our very special guest, Mr. Tyler Adams, print production manager over at Black Rifle Coffee. This interview happened so quickly. Thank you to producer Chris and you, Tyler, for jumping on, because I see so many Black Rifle Coffee shirts and promo items. I think now just because I see the brand, it like pokes out at me all the time. So it was really cool to be able to learn more about you. But also I asked a lot, hey, can we bring somebody on who has other production manager experience so we can help share some notes and stuff?
All right.
Okay. That's a lot.
But yeah, that's cool to hear. See stuff popping up.
Yeah, so give us a little background on Black Rifle. You hear the word coffee, which people are going to be like, coffee, merch? Give it to us. Tell us about it.
Yeah, no, it's a really unique spot. So owner, Evan Hafer, started the company basically out of his garage, roasting really small batch coffee, and linked up with some of the other guys here. So some of the faces you see like on the YouTube commercials, advertisements, they decided to join forces. So there was a company called Article 15 that was making just t-shirts, apparel. Matt and Jared Taylor, they were running that, and reached out to Evan and said, hey, can you make us a small roasted coffee and see how that moves on our site? They decided, man, this is probably the way to go. All of the apparel was still kind of an outsourced operation. The company started in 2014, and then February 2017 is when we spun up our own print shop here in Salt Lake City. And one of the very first things I was telling the guys earlier, looking back through the Printavo invoices, you got everything from the very beginning to see how different it is now. Once we brought it in-house, just everything took off.
So, okay, you guys have like 1.2 million followers on Instagram on the coffee page, or 1.7 million followers. How much of the business is now merch versus coffee? Like, is it still primarily coffee? Is there like, give us just to try to understand scale.
Oh yeah, it's still primarily coffee. So we make a very large amount of coffee now compared to what we've been putting out there. So we are working on the roasting facility to have more capacity for that. But just to give you an idea, our standard roasting, putting out the 1 pound bags and that, we've also got to provide for our standalone coffee shops that are opening up across the country now. And that process kind of gets exponential because they also sell some of the apparel inside. And then there's another arm, which is our ready-to-drink coffee. It comes in a little can. Probably see it in a bunch of gas stations and stuff. So each one of those components, it's just growing like crazy. So for me in apparel, we're actually on the smaller side of it, but the amount of apparel that we crank out, it's pretty substantial. So I outgrew my facility here with the 2 autos probably about a year ago, year and a half.
This is just on the internal brand.
Yep.
Like, you guys don't do any work for anybody else.
You're just printing for yourself.
Yeah, it's all just our own stuff.
Wow. So on your site right now, beautiful website, did you start coming up with the creative and the designs? Like, talk to us about the inception of merch. So you built the coffee brand was built, and then we're like, okay, we want to bring merch in-house. Talk to us about that.
So that was actually, I don't know, it just made a lot of sense because you guys know if we're using somebody that's a few states away, a shirt shows up and maybe the color just wasn't quite right, and then it's another week or two to try to get the right one. So just for that aspect of being able to make adjustments right away. It's like, yeah, maybe take this in-house and we can run it ourselves. So
Wow.
when those decisions were made, I was actually working in the fulfillment side, just shipping the packages out. And one of the guys came over and said, "Hey, do you want to maybe try something else? We're going to start up a print shop. We finished setting that thing up." I said, "Sure, I've got zero experience in that, but see how it goes."
What were you doing before?
I was pursuing my dream of teaching like high school, junior high, so got a couple of degrees right out of the military for that.
Uh-huh.
And I taught 7th and 8th grade science.
How do you think that's lent to your role now? Like, is that a lot of the coaching aspects too, and
Probably a little bit of the patience.
teaching? I don't want to make a.
You can be
crude,
patient with
crude
7th graders. You
joke,
can be
but-
patient
Yeah,
with
I was
your
gonna
production team. All right,
Yeah.
cool, fair enough.
Yep.
Your operation now, you've almost outgrown 2 autos. Is everything mostly e-commerce? You're obviously doing some stuff and sending it to the retail stores. Is it mostly all e-commerce and fulfillment that way?
Yeah, still the majority of the sales are e-com.
How are you guys are you guys printing on demand? Because I was just looking at your site and you've got
There's so many SKUs.
quite a few SKUs.
I mean,
Are
I'm
you using
scrolling.
DTG?
I'm scrolling.
I keep scrolling. How do you manage that many SKUs?
I've actually got a really good team that's our forecast and demand planning. And so they review that data constantly and let me know, hey, this one's not really moving as well as we thought, and start looking into the life cycle of some of those items. And yeah, that part, I used to do all of that here myself, but yeah, you can see this year we added more items than we've ever had, and just kind of, what was the phrase? Throw it at the wall and see what sticks.
How did you forecast then? Because I gotta imagine you still had a bunch of SKUs then as well. By the
Yeah.
way, I'm still scrolling. Do you have a total number?
That thing
And
was-
every SKU has 7 sizes, 6
Right.
sizes.
yeah. So that was
I'm
a
gonna sum this up in the
huge
background here.
project that was started up, man, September, October last year. And just said, hey, get ready. We want to put out this much stuff and just basically have as many options as possible. And
Wow.
trying to make that happen.
And are these all screen printed, or do you do any DTG or like transfers, or is this all screen printed in house?
It's all screen printed in-house. Well, sorry. It's all screen printed, but because I outgrew here, I did have to send quite a bit of work out to some other shops.
But everything is screen printed.
Yeah.
Wow. But and all this stuff you are taking in inventory, so you are printing ahead of time and putting it on your shelf and then selling it. It's not necessarily that there is like a print on demand or anything
Or
like
are
that,
they
right?
pre-sold too?
Or are they you're not like doing pre-orders. This is actually like inventory that you're putting on your shelves to sell,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Haven't delved into the
Wow.
pre-order stuff for quite a while.
Gotcha. That's really interesting because I wrestle with this idea. We run a bunch of Shopify brands of actually pre-printing stuff and putting on our shelves and acting like a retail store. But then like waste just hurts me.
Right.
But like a retail store or a restaurant has to just factor in waste. You have to factor that in. How do you factor in what you're not going to sell? Like just the shit that's going to sit on your shelves forever.
Well, that's one of the nice parts, really, of the brand and what we do. We've always got events that we're sponsoring. We've got different things for employees. We've got, just here in Salt Lake, we've got 14 different Afghani refugee families that either work for us or family member works for us. And there's more of their relatives all the time. So it gives us pretty unique opportunities to help contribute because some of that stuff's pretty readily available.
Makes sense. So you factor in the fact that you're going to need this for promo, waste, giveaway. It's just going to get used.
Yeah.
Interesting. Do you guys use any specific tools for inventory to like
Yeah,
make it
what's
all
the tech
happen?
stack?
Like, yeah.
So that part, it's constantly under evaluation, right? So we just started with our own ERP system, and maybe a year ago now. And
Like
so
a NetSuite or
yeah,
something?
yep. And so having that thing built for the way that we run for each department, it's still evolving. And so for each point
Forever evolving.
right? And so for each point of sale, we have to implement different things and technologies, and you try one out and you're like, yeah, no, that's definitely not going to work. So my forecasting team, they're in the middle of reviewing that right now, because the majority of the work that I do, and bless her soul, comes from one woman and a spreadsheet. So she dials all that
And
data in and says, hey, here's what it looks like.
gotcha. So then she will basically look at what is needed, and then she'll place orders to you to say, okay, go produce, I need 24 more of this shirt or 48 more of these, or this store is running low on that, right?
Yeah.
Is that kind of how it works?
Yep.
It's like your own internal sales team kind of thing.
Yes, exactly.
Right. I feel like there's a lot here, Tyler, because there's so many items here, and that clearly didn't start yesterday. This was a buildup of things happening over time. So
Yep.
the way the tech stack works, so you've got NetSuite on top. I'm assuming that's got accounting, all the sales data is going in, they're running reports and stuff is the goal there. Then inventories in there, or Shopify, or
Yeah, we've been using Shopify for a while. But
okay, and then that goes into what's
Do you use
to
ShipStation
be
or?
right. Is that on the fulfillment side?
yes, that's on the fulfillment side. So yeah, ShipStation is what we've been using here still. The distribution centers, it's a totally separate thing. So I feed the inventory over there, and I see it get received in, and
And is that
Nope,
in-house too, the distribution center, or do you guys work with a third party?
it's third party.
Got it.
Interesting.
Okay.
So
And when
you
did that shift
outsourced.
happen?
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. When did that shift happen? Did you guys do it in-house for a while and then eventually move it out?
Yeah, we did do it in-house. So like I was saying, that's where I started, here in this building that I'm in, without a roof, so I can't adjust this lighting at all. But we had fulfillment out of here for right about a year, and then we had to go to a bigger facility. So then the third party was the only way to go to handle all of that. So it's renegotiating those contracts and stuff.
So for listeners that are trying to kind of wrap their heads around this is essentially a third-party logistics company. You may have heard us talk about ShipBob, or where you essentially rent out space at these big facilities. This is like how Fulfillment by Amazon works, right?
Yeah.
So then so every time an order comes in, it actually goes to them.
Mm-hmm.
And then do you have to like pay them per package, or how does that work?
That contract, I honestly don't know.
And so those companies, those 3PLs, they'll get the products to the end user, and that's essentially how they get 3 to 5 day shipping. Now you're just focusing on printing and getting inventory to the 3PLs. You guys are focusing on selling online, and they handle all the fulfillment.
Yeah. Except for
Does
one
that
piece.
does that is the what's that?
There's one piece that's kind of unique to it, where we're just talking straight e-com. It comes from those distribution centers. But now that our retail stores are getting built up and we're getting more of them, we wanted to have more of an oversight of that. So we have one company distribution center for just our retail locations. So it's a little bit different, but basically just one more distribution center to fill.
So how many presses and folks you guys have on the production side to get a sense of the size?
Yeah, so I've got 2 autos in here right now. One 12, 14 Sportsman, and then we just barely got a 6-head Gauntlet replaced with a 6-head Sportsman. It runs a little bit quicker. And then I've got a full packaging line that's automated now, and 27 people. So that 27 also includes my embroidery team out there. So it's pretty small.
It's pretty. I think you're giving yourself not enough credit. That's a pretty big operation. I guess like you knew nothing about printing when you were kind of handed this, and how many years ago was that?
That was 5 years ago now.
And now you're running a pretty large operation. What has the learning curve been for? Is it just, do you have other really good printers? Are you the guy that knows how to print everything, figure everything out? Talk to us about how how you're able to bring that talent level up.
Oh man, that's one of the best parts about this place. I came on just printing, so learning the presses and stuff. And we had a guy in charge here, his name is Brian, and he knew everything in and out. Just would get super excited about the science of printing. And I'm a nerd with science anyway, right? So I latched onto as much of that as I could, and I was like, this is actually super cool. And there was another guy that he'd been printing for several years already. And so me and him, we kind of stepped up and kept getting a little more responsibility back here. And then both of them have shifted to other things. One's over in our art department. Brian's with another company, and I still reach out and say, hey, have you ever ran into this before? I'm just still trying to learn as much as I can, because it's the learning curve. Yeah, it was pretty much straight up.
What's the biggest challenge you feel like you have recently now that you're working through?
Scheduling the amount of jobs that we need to get done and out. So I'm about 2 weeks behind where I should be. And it's really not, I got to remind myself, like, it's Q4. We've hit all those deadlines for Black Friday sales and all of that. But still, one shipment that you're counting on doesn't show up and sets you back a few days. So
how have you tackled scheduling to improve on it, or to balance capacity, or deadlines, things coming in late? Especially because what's interesting, right, is you came from outside the space and you pick things up, and I'm sure you applied your past to what they were doing and so on to create new solutions.
Yeah. So the biggest thing that we've been able to do is just, we've got what we call safety stock, which is about the size of 2.5 of our standard runs. So like 1,400 piece. And we keep that on hand as much as we can. So if there's a shipment that got delayed, it's generally this type of color. Most of our t-shirts end up being on the same blank, which is great because I can have a safety stock, and if it doesn't show up, cool. When it does, it'll just backfill what was already here. And that's really the only way that we've been able to do it with where we're at now. Because I don't know if you guys have heard, but supply chain and logistics this year have been kind of funny.
Just a little bit.
Yep.
But with so many SKUs, if something goes out of stock, it's not like it's the end of the world. Like, you're not delivering product for an event coming up generally. Like, you're not doing bulk orders, right?
Right.
So is it more just wrestling with the sales or the marketing team to be like, sorry guys, you're not getting this one next week? You know, is it a lot of back and forth of tell me what you actually need, or like how do you figure out what's most important for you to do first?
Yeah, there's a little bit of that. If we're given a deadline, hey, this is what we want for a few months down the road, we want to release it for this, then yeah, if our purchasing team doesn't have confidence that we're going to get that by that date, then we got to start revisiting and say, okay, maybe we should look at a different design, a different piece of apparel. And those teams are pretty good. They communicate constantly, so we manage to avoid a lot of that heartache.
What about hiring, Tyler? So you've got an open role. You found somebody that's going to work. How do you take on that? Right, especially because what I find very interesting again is just that you come from outside of the space, and now can maybe have a different perspective of how best to learn.
Yeah.
Are there any tricks that you use now?
As far as hiring, it's all about the personality. So the questions that I ask them is more just tell me a little bit about yourself and what you would encounter at your prior place of employment. Because you can tell a whole lot about some of the responses that you get. So if people out there are looking for work and get asked about, your prior employer, issues that you ran into, and the responses are all as well. They were doing this. They would do this. And it's not directed themselves, I would do this. Then that's probably a candidate that I would avoid. And it's worked out pretty good. We've got sorry, I don't know how much of this you can hear in the background.
No, but what about the
you're good.
training aspect though? So they started their first day.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get somebody the most utilized as possible, as quickly as possible?
I try to rotate people in a certain pattern once they come in. So I do have a small ASP tagging press.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I love that thing because it's just like, it's the same procedure as a bigger press, only if there's a mistake, it's not so dramatic, right? So I'll have them work on that machine for the first couple of weeks, and then I just kind of float them around to the different positions that we have and put myself down on the floor. I'm trying to get 15 hours on the floor so that I can work with each of these guys and try to refine the stuff that we need.
So you get them, you get them starting to kind of shadow different people.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a flow that it's going from start to finish on a whole job process?
Yeah. So if they're starting out on that tagging press, then they're just going to be the assistant on the machine and just learning from the guy running it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they're proficient at that, they'll start running the machine. Then I'll move them over to one of the main lines, and it's starting at the end again at catching, and then just keeping their eyes out for mistakes coming off the line. And then I'll move them up to the press and try to work them into actually running it as soon as I can. And some guys, they don't want to be operating the main press, and that's fine. So we just try to put everybody where they're most comfortable and working the most efficient.
If
What
I
about
were
you,
to, yeah, no, this is where like this training that you talk about, Tyler, like how well, if a new printer is coming in or a new employee, how well documented is the training process? Do you have it sounds like, do you have everything dialed out where they can watch videos and learn, or is it a lot of like they have a buddy system? How do you, if I were an employee there and it was my first day, what would that experience look like?
So the first day,
yeah,
I've got this 10-page manual for the print shop, and it covers everything because we are different than most shops. So I don't have like a screen tech that all they're doing is working in the dark room and prepping screens. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
does a little bit of that. And so everything's outlined the way that we've found to be the most efficient for us. And like, hey, refer to this thing and you'll see what I'm trying to highlight at each press. Like, hey, this is the most common thing that comes up. Here's how to fix that. So it's just a bunch of little tips that anybody can get started with. And then the rest of that is just continual spot checks. See, hey, are you feeling comfortable, or is this not working out? And trying to work through them that way. And then, every month you're following up to see how they are.
What do
So
you
that-
do, Steven?
What do I need to do?
No, okay, what do you do today, and then what do you feel like is your ideal then for? You've got a new press operator starting. Now what?
We have a really good onboarding system for everything except production. That's definitely a weak point of ours. Everyone starts at the end of the dryer. And that's very much the, like, if you're going to start here, you're going to work at the end of the dryer. And then it's kind of like the weed out. The guys that last at the end of the dryer and that they're doing well, will like move them over to unloading and tearing down jobs. And then if they're good, they'll start actually, printing. But we don't have a good program dialed out, like an apprenticeship. That 10-page manual, we don't have. Let me ask you this, Tyler. With that 10-page manual, are you constantly, like, does everyone know it like the back of their hand? Because, like, you can give it to someone once, but, like, is it well published
Or
in the
read
shop?
it,
Is it very accessible? Like, how do you, because that standardization is so important in shops. How do you continue to educate, not just like one-time thing?
So that's the fun part. The first few days, you'll see a new guy, and you'll see it on the floor with them, and they'll be looking at it at break or whatever. And then over time, you kind of see it less and less till you don't see it at all. So this is going to sound dumb probably, but one of my operators that he's been working for over a year, he was peeling the shirts off for somebody else. And I put in there, please put it on the belt so that you can see the seams, so the guy catching it isn't struggling with this wad of shirt, right? And when I went down there, I was like, dude, I wrote that out. Like, it was in bold. So do you remember looking at that? He's like, oh, no, I don't. So the time that I spent on the floor, that's what I'm looking for. If I've written it down specifically, I'm like, maybe you should go and read that over tonight.
That they are supposed to read it, they take it home or whatever, or you go over it in person with them. Because I feel like handing somebody like these 10 pages, be like, here,
Yeah. No, that's horrible when it's like, hey, check it out. Here's your manual. We'll see you later. No, so because like I said, there's a few key things in there, and that's what I'll hit and say. There's actually a lot in here that will help you out and avoid a lot of these hiccups that I ran into, and that's why I put this thing together.
So one of the things is, Tyler, like, obviously veteran owned. A lot of you are veterans. Do you do the same with your press operators? Or are you mostly trying to hire, law enforcement veterans, and is that kind of the same style with your people, or?
Yeah, if we try to, but what it looks like for us is I've got 3 guys that were Afghani special forces, and then myself, and then the rest of the crew, they were civilian, not military.
Mm-hmm.
So anymore, if I try to get really picky and I'm like, no, wait for a veteran, like, I'm not going to get anybody hired.
Right. So you'll try to make, if it comes around, that's cool, but the business still has to run.
Yeah.
Does your experience, like, in the military and the way things are structured and organized, and like, is is that kind of how the company is run? Because you're kind of you know, like that's where you learned life. Like, does that ever come out? I don't know. I'm not, you know, that's not Bruce or I, but does that experience ever translate?
Yeah, a little bit. So if there's directions that are given, it's really easy to just run with it. And you may not have all the details that I don't know, you would probably be given somewhere else, but that's just kind of what we're used to. You've got the general idea, you're going to go and execute that and get things to work out.
That's super interesting. Yeah, that's, I don't know. It's just like, you know, you have a lot of experience from that, and the answer is you have to follow those orders because you have to. Like, this is the military, you know. And so I think about my shop, and I'll tell someone to peel tape off so that it doesn't get all gummy for weeks. And sometimes they'll be like, "Oh yeah, we forgot, sorry." And you're just like, you know,
Yeah, oh dude. So, and that's where I'll be honest, I have to kind of tamper that down because I'm a pretty stress-free guy anymore. I don't get worked up and do the Sergeant Adam stuff. But when it's like, hey, you guys got to remember to empty the trash out at the end of the shift, and you come back in and it's full, it's so tempting to throw that trash can. But it's not the military. You can't do that. So I don't know. Try to remember most of these guys, like I said, they weren't in the military, and I don't want them to experience that because they didn't sign up for that.
How do you manage quality coming out too? So your
all
your
retail.
end customer who may complain is kind of removed from it, right? Because it goes to the logistics company, and then it goes to the end customer, and then maybe they write back to customer service, and then maybe it comes back to you. But
Yeah. Our customer service department is outstanding. They reach out to me if there's an issue with the shirt, like there's a thread in there and it did make it through here, then they'll send me a picture of it and say, hey, what's going on with this? And we'll get it replaced, which that turnover time is real quick since it is a third party. They just say, okay, we'll get it replaced. We'll let our production team know. And then I just revisit the issue with my team here. Say, hey, this popped up. We got to go over this again.
Now, Tyler, will you do all the shirts have to be folded, labeled, barcoded before they go to the third party?
Yeah.
So they have to be retail ready, basically? Okay.
Yes.
So the third party logistics, they don't QC anything. They put it on the shelves, and if you put bad product in there, your customers are getting bad product.
Yeah.
So you talk about like all the things you're doing on scaling. Talk to us about your packaging and all that stuff. Like, did you guys invest in a huge auto folder and bagger and the whole 9 yards, or what?
Yep. That was one of the first things when we had the budget open up. Said, this is what we need. So
What system did you go with?
we've got the M&R with the, holy cow, what is it, the K950 and
Yeah.
the AB9000 at the end. And
Gotcha.
right now it's just the one. And sorry, I need to stop saying just. But with scaling everything up, I need more packaging lines. So I have a quality control team, and that's what they do. They scan over every piece of apparel before they're putting it down that folder and adjusting it for every job that we have. And they're great at what they do.
what does that team look like? Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
go ahead,
what's that
Tim.
look like? No, go ahead.
Yeah, so are they just looking and then going back, or are they're the ones that are laying the shirt on the folder too?
Yeah, so there's 3, and they're running the machine, and they're also packaging everything in the quantities that need to be for our distribution center. And then we palletize it and bring it over to our shipping and receiving department. So that team, They do a lot of the physical stuff.
Is that what the setup you have, Steven, equipment-wise? I know. Didn't you buy a folder?
Yeah, I bought a folder, not the 950. It was a couple years older. It's in the 8s. But yeah, we use it very heavily for our retail stuff, for getting everything retail ready and just like perfectly folded. We do all of our own fulfillment. That's why I was so interested when you said you send it somewhere else. But that QC is so important because it just hurts your heart when you send someone a shirt and they send you something back and say like, there's a hole in the armpit. And you're like, come on. Because the cost of replacing that is shipping, is one more shirt. I mean, it's expensive.
Yep.
To factor that in, which is super interesting. So what does Black Rifle Coffee on the printing side look like a year from now, Tyler?
A year from now, we'll have a couple of Cobra presses, and then 2 other
Okay.
Sportsmans, 2 split belt dryers, a totally different darkroom setup, and then those 2 other packaging lines. So
Wow.
it looks quite different.
Wow. Are you guys going direct to screen, or do you have that yet?
Yeah, we actually just got that this year.
Gotcha.
So I've got an iMimage that has been pretty awesome. Nobody really told me though that there's a bit of adjustment you need for that too, getting the right
For your
emulsion,
humidity?
and
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
because if that emulsion's not happy, then your image really isn't either.
Wow. Do you guys save screen because you're running so many repeat orders? Do you save screens or do you reburn every time?
No, so that's why I don't have like a full-time screen person, because we've got a catalog that we just keep, and once those screens wear out, yeah, we'll replace them. And really, you're just doing that if it's new designs coming out.
Mm-hmm.
So
I guess like you've been on Printavo since 2017. What does your Printavo look like now compared to what it was? Like statuses, like is it crazy?
yeah, yep, it's very, very different. So we had, man, those initial orders, only we had like 80 shirts that we were sending out, and we had to schedule time for hand folding and pushing that little sealer. Like it was it was not the most efficient way to do stuff, but we were just learning. And then now that same design will be doing 5,000 at a time instead of 80.
Jeez. Wow.
But yeah.
It's a lot of growth.
Wow.
And I'm sure last year was huge for you guys too,
Oh yeah.
with the online stores.
Yeah, last year kind of spiked like a lot of the other e-com that we saw.
Do you think you'll ever go to a digital squeegee, Tyler? Just because of the space you're in?
I don't know. We kicked that idea around a bunch. One of my friends has one in one of the cities here up north, and it's pretty cool watching that thing work. But yeah, we definitely couldn't have one in this shop.
How far are y'all from Salt Lake City?
Oh, we're right in it. So
Oh, sweet. I
yeah,
think-
from where I'm at,
Sweet.
you look.
Bruce,
You guys coming to Salt Lake?
we were
Want
just
to do a
talking
little
about our
ski
ski
trip.
trip in the spring. We might do our park. We do a ski trip every February, so maybe we'll do. We had Park City on the map last night as a potential.
Dude, there you go.
So
And Snowbird's just right up there too. So yeah,
all right,
you have to stop
all right,
in.
Bruce, shop tour.
That's perfect. Tyler, really appreciate the time today. This is Tyler Adams, print production manager over at Black Rifle Coffee. You guys have a lot of growth, so we'll definitely have to do a check-in or some sort of cool shop tour when everything's set up.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks for having me on.
Sweet.
Perfect.
Thanks so much,
Have a good one,
Tyler.
Tyler.
We'll talk to you
See
soon.
you guys in the next episode. Thanks so much for listening to Printavo Print Podcast.